Have you ever struggled with balancing both confidence and humility as a leader? Today, we're going to dive into that conversation with a special guest and give you some best practices to overcome and improve or have the right balance. My name is Z.
And I'm Rich. Z, I'm really excited to be talking about this and discussing this topic today. And the reason why is because this is something that I feel like I struggle with, balancing confidence and humility. When I'm a very task-oriented, head down, do the work type of guy. But when I'm super passionate about a topic, it's one of those things where I talk emphatically. You can tell I'm passionate, and you probably obviously can see that in the podcast episodes. So just balancing, that confidence and humility and being able to do that effectively.
Yeah. And just to be honest, you're not alone, right? I think it's one of the things that many leaders and many teammates aspiring to be leaders want to work on, because there is those extremes that do happen. And, again, it's good to have them, right? But in a good dose or a good amount, right? But when you overdo it, it can morph into something not so pleasant. And it's not like that our intention is that, right? It's just that, like, to your point, I love that you said, we get passionate. We get really into it, that it can come across as like, all right, now you're bragging or calm down. Or the opposite, right? Where you're just like, oh my gosh, you did amazing. You're like, no, it was okay. It was fine. Like taking it and be like, you know what? Thank you for that. I really appreciate you sharing that with me, or I really value that, and it then starts building up that confidence, right? Yeah. So it's a fun topic, and it's one of those things that, people go, oh, Z, you never lack of confidence. I'm like, dude, it's like everybody else. There's those moments where I doubt myself, or I'm not sure, or even afterwards, we're our worst critics, and we have to find that balance to keep moving forward, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of that. We did recently receive an amazing award. I like to highlight this in this episode. So a few weeks ago, we were we were ranked 20 out of 25 when it comes to the world's best workplaces by Fortune. Mm-hmm. So again, what a great accolade! And one of those things that's like people say, well, why are you boasting or highlighting? It's like, no, it's actually highlighting all the hard work that we've done as a organization, and then layering it down to all the different departments, because every department had a big contribution to that award. And I'm really, really proud of that. And my understanding, it wasn't easy. There's a lot of factors there. And then being at a 25 of the world, that's a huge accolade, man. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you're definitely proud of it. But it's humbling at the same time, right? So it's one of those things where it's great to have this culture, and we strive very hard to create that type of culture. Having one of the best workplaces in the world, that's amazing. But we really focus on different sort of aspects to help that and elevate that. So.
Well, just like anything too, it's like, okay, great. Now, how do we continue that, or how do we continue to improve or sustain it?
Right.
Which is a never-ending learning, never ending, right? We can just be like, oh, we made it, we're done. We're gonna stop trying. But speaking of that, we do have a guest today, and again, Rich, if you don't mind, kind of give us a quick little intro.
Yeah, absolutely. So today I'm very excited to introduce Michelle Harris. She's with us. I won't do you any justice in explaining your title, so I'll go ahead and let you do that and tell us a little bit about what you do for Insight.
Thanks, Rich. I'm our events marketing manager over our corporate events marketing team. So we have the opportunity to work with a lot of different leaders and partners, and whether it's teammates or clients, on our signature events, a variety of client appreciation, golf events, kind of everything where we have an opportunity to, interact with teammates and clients. So it's been a great experience since I've been here, and really have enjoyed it.
So, Michelle, again, how long have you been with us at Insight now?
About a year and a half.
So, even though, honestly, it doesn't feel, I feel like you've been here for a long time, right? You've probably already seen, just that time, there's been so much that you've been involved in and kind of managing and seeing. I think with anything, there's always a learning curve. There's some learning that goes on, and at the same time, as you're going through these events and these different projects or programs. And then the feedback, getting that feedback to improve on it. Because I imagine when you came in, very observant, okay, how are things run, kind of soaking it in that first, 30, 60 days. But then now it's like, okay, now how can I make it better? Or how can we continue to, build upon what's going great, but also how can we make it better for the future? So what my first question to you is, how do you instill that, that learning initiative and the receiving and giving feedback in your leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. And you obviously talk about, it does feel like I've been here a really long time and I've been able to kind of dive in literally since my second week. I was thrown into an event and got to observe and see. And, I had my own feedback coming in, but it was great to really hear from others who I hadn't been part of the planning process. And, my team did a great job putting everything together. But to kind of fast forward and see the feedback from leaders, it was really great to see how even after an event that was viewed successful by all accounts, from leaders to external partners, et cetera, the team, we really focus on, that was great, we appreciate the feedback, but now what can we do next time? What A, B, and C that we need to focus on, which I think is that balancing act in order to get better. We all want to give the pat on the back or say thank you, but now let's look to next time, next event. It's right around the corner. What can we do?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important to have that growth mindset and just keeping that, kind of at the forefront or at the center, realizing and taking, as you mentioned before, taking those compliments and then really saying, okay, that's awesome. That's great. We're going to highlight that. But also we want to continuously get better. So how is it that you can foster or encourage that feedback system throughout your team to continue to help you grow and, create that confidence and that balancing act?
Mm-hmm. I would say a huge component of it is communication. And, obviously coming in as a new leader and most of my team was new, it takes time to build that trust. And kind of with the trust comes the communication where we do give each other feedback or, hey, can we try this next time? Or, this might not have worked, or we may have always done this in the past, so it's challenging the status quo, giving the feedback, and really being open to the communication. And obviously that doesn't happen overnight because, again, we're all new, we're building, most of us are trying to figure out what is her style like, what is their style like. And so it just takes the time and the communication to focus on bettering ourselves as a team, because at the end of the day, we work together as a team and our success is together.
Yeah, and I love that you just said it starts with the team, right? It's like you're instilling that within your team and your culture of your team, but then they take it upon themselves to then seek it out themselves with the leaders, with the various different teammates that they interact with during these events, to constantly be seeking and being comfortable seeking it out. And then the receiving part of okay, great, dude, definitely take the accolades, take the kudos, but at the same time, peel that onion a little bit and get into hey, how can we continue to make this better? Or was there really something that we could have done, right? That was not 100% the way it planned out, and how can we learn from it? And that's that part, the learning part. Yeah. So I guess a follow-up question, and I forgot, that's right, because not only were you new, but you had your whole team was practically new. So let's talk about that when it comes to how did you collect feedback from the past, from the previous team, or did you do anything around that to say, hey, what did we learn from the past that we can take? Because you really didn't have a pass with Insight. You just came in and said, hey, plug in and start with the events.
Yeah. As we tried to find as much as we could and kind of having those conversations to figure out what have we done in the past, what worked well, what didn't. I got some context obviously during the interview process and coming in and, everything that you learn from the previous team, the individuals that they've worked with. But really it's with a whole new team, you establish new process, new procedure, new ways of doing things, because challenging the status quo can be good. Sometimes the feedback with doing something different may not always be good, but you still take that and then you could turn and pivot for next time, or the feedback is positive and it's the changes that we made were well received. And so let's do that again next time, or how can we even improve on that more? So it was taking obviously what's been done, but also figuring out with the new team, we all have strengths that we can rely on. And so honing in more on that and how we can use our strengths and channel it forward for events going forward, because we're going to be the team going forward. And change is good. It's challenging, but it can be good.
Yeah, and that's the only thing that's constant, right? So, yeah.
Exactly. And that's a great point you mentioned, leveraging strengths, right? So on the feedback side, has there ever been a time where, and it doesn't necessarily have to be at Insight, but that you received feedback and it's either helped out your confidence or, kind of aided to that being more humble side?
Yes. having the conversation about confidence and humility, it's challenging and it is hard because, you know, as you think of yourself, sometimes being humble, it is hard to talk about yourself and, you know, to the points earlier on giving yourself kudos and being willing to accept it. So there definitely, I've had a lot of growth even in my short time here so far, and that really truly allowing like myself to hear the leaders that are giving me the feedback with some positive changes that, you know, we've made and that our team has been doing to really elevate our events. So I definitely seen, again, in the year and a half here, I've grown personally in my confidence because I'm willing myself to listen and hear them versus being like, yep, thanks, but this is what we can do better. You want to focus on what we can do better, but to your point earlier, you still need to focus on and allow yourself to hear what people are saying, because that helps you just love your job more, which I think helps you even do more. Better every day.
Yeah, exactly. I love that because you just don't see it as a job. You see it as it's a passion, right? It's feeling that passion that you have. Like it reminds you, why did I do this in the first place? People are now reminding you because, oh my gosh, you know, when you did this, it was a lifesaver. Or that, I love the way you said that elevated the event or elevated the experience, right? I guess the one last question before we go to the next one on this one is your teammates, right? You have a whole bunch of teammates, new teammates. Now, how do you help them when it comes to that balancing act between confidence and humility? Because I can imagine their personality, there's some that are very confident going in, and then some that are, you know, not as confident, but their humility, they're kind of, you know, they're very humble, but they don't really go to that next level. How do you help teammates with that balance?
You're right, 100%, that every person is different. Everyone has a different confidence level, including myself. So it's figuring out and kind of blending all of our styles, but early on as I built those relationships and continue to with the team, I start to understand more of what they do need. So are they an individual that needs a little bit more of a pep talk, you know, and needs more of the affirmation, you know, each week, you know, leading up to an event? Or is it someone where it's like, you know what, I know that they have a lot of confidence, but let's figure out how I can take their confidence and help to build upon that, whether it's, you know, improving a process or something that could help them with the team, with this project in particular, or with the leader later. So I think it's a lot of conversations, the trust, like I mentioned earlier, because if you don't have that, like, I can't give feedback without them being like, you know what, Michelle's saying this from a good place, not from I want to be highly critical of, you know, X, Y, and Z person, but I truly care about my team. Like we were talking earlier in our events team meeting that we're a work family, and you kind of want to take that and help each other build that confidence, you know, and it's just taking the feedback that they and give, or I guess providing the feedback that I think that they might need.
Yeah, and again, it's not a one size fits all, right? To your point, every individual is different, and I know that we've done also like, you know, disc trainings and team buildings, and that way you can start bonding and building that team and understanding, you know, everybody's strengths, but also their areas of opportunity and growth. But at the same time, also, how do I deliver this message that is really going to resonate with them instead of, to your point, get misunderstanding it?
Yep.
Oh man, I'm horrible at my job. Michelle just gave me all this feedback, and it's like, no, like, you know, Michelle gave me this feedback to make me better.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and much to that same point, you know, assuming that positive intent, right, when you are providing that feedback, right? So another key component of this is, you know, self appreciation and just, you know, just being comfortable with that, just essentially, you know, taking that criticism, assuming the positive feedback, and then also how can you leverage that with, you know, as building a culture to embrace that feedback?
I think it comes down to, again, where the feedback is coming from. Like if it's coming from a place of love and it is meant to help you grow, versus it's not me nitpicking or trying to think of some reason why, like, oh, Rich, you did this. It's like, no, it's me along with you. It's not just you. You're not out here siloed, but kind of how can I help you to help our team and grow? And so I think it just depends on the place that it's coming from. And I think that just starts with building that trust with the team, like I mentioned multiple times, but that's a huge component of, you know, building their confidence and our team in general of, you know, working together.
Yeah. You know, and this kind of pivot a little bit, because again, knowing that you work a lot with, you know, various events and not only internal, but external, right? Our partners and several others. You know, we talk about executive presence. We talk about these different tools. I think this is a good balance of that as well, right? Executive presence, you have to have a good balance of both confidence and humility. tell us about when, you know, you don't have to give a name or anything, but, you know, there's been, imagine some leaders that you work with who have a good balance and you can just tell. Well, can you give us an example of what that looks like and what sets them apart from others that you work with that maybe either go one or the other?
That's a great question. And there are quite a few examples at Insight, which I think is another reason what makes Insight so special and definitely probably helps get us in that 20 out of 25 list. But I think just as you're meeting with them, you know, leaders have so many things on their plates. Like they're, you know, how they handle everything is amazing. And then we're coming in with additional questions and, you know, seeking information from them. And I think the ones that I've had the privilege of working with, it's just, I see that it may sound kind of silly, but like I see that like they see me. It's not just like a checkbox of like, oh, you know, Michelle's coming at me again. Yes, I have my X, Y, and Z, like things that I need answered, but like they treat me with the dignity and respect of like I'm any other person. I'm not just, you know, not just an events manager that's coming to, you know, do a project, but I think that dignity piece helps to build my confidence of like, okay, they see me, you know, as a leader here and recognize, you know, the work that our team is doing, which is great. And so there's definitely just, I enjoy our leaders and the opportunity to work with them, which has been great.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's great. Like being seen is so important.
Mm-hmm.
I think just adding to the layer, and I've seen this too. Let me know if you've seen some examples too. It's like when you see, you know, the leader has that nice balance is when they are attending a session or a meeting or whatever, even live, they're just like, you know, just willing to also like roll up their sleeves a little bit, right? Like I even seen examples of somebody trying to put up, you know, I don't know, signage or something, and it's like crunch time, and I see some leaders like kind of roll up their sleeve and help them, or you know, hey, what do you know, even asking, hey, do you need help with anything? Do you want me to? For me, that's just a great sign of, you know, humility, right? It's like not like, oh, I'm at this, I have this title, and you're gonna do all that work. It's below me, right? It's none of that. It's what do you need help? What's going on? Oh, do you need some water? Even them asking, right? It's like, thanks, I appreciate that. You see me, right? That whole example, I love that.
And it's huge. You see those examples like on a regular basis. I mean, at our events, you see Joyce literally walking by herself through and saying like, hi, how you guys doing? Like, do you need anything? Even coming into our events office and asking us, to your point, like, do you guys need anything? Do you know, any, and same thing if I'm, say, at a roadblock trying to get an answer, there's plenty of leaders that will come and say, what can I do to help? What do you need from me? And it's like, well, I haven't gotten this answer, so I really need this high priority. And they're, you know, their schedules, they're like, you know, yep, I can give you 15 more minutes because I know that we need to get this done. So I think just recognizing and seeing them recognize that, you know, the value of their time and either help and whatever it is much appreciated.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so you mentioned roadblocks, and I know Z has alluded to some of the challenges you've faced coming into Insight. First of all, being external to the organization, and then also building out your team. How do you stay optimistic while navigating those challenges?
I feel like you really have no other choice but to be optimistic. I've always kind of felt like I was like a glass half full kind of person, you know, ever since growing up. And, you know, you can't get too down on yourself. Something may go wrong. I like, especially with the events world, it's not if something goes wrong, it's when. Yeah. So we have to be ready to face some of those roadblocks. And it just makes it easier to work through, whether it's yourself or your team, if you have a positive attitude. Because when you don't, it just like you always have that something in your ear saying like, oh, nope, you can't do this or that might go wrong. But you just have to stay positive and keep going because it's all you can do, or else you get stuck and no one wants to be in that place. So just,
Self-compassion. I like that. I like that.
I love that. It's not, you know, is it when? Because it's like we talk about VUCA all the time, right? Yeah. When it's like something's going to happen. It's inevitable. Not only are you as a leader have to work through that, right? Know that something's gonna happen. We just have to, you know, what is plan A, B, C? What can we do? Seeking others, like taking that strategic pause and be like, all right, time out. What's changed? What do we need to do? But then adding it to your team now, what have you done to instill that in them? Because a lot of times you're not everywhere. I wish, you know, like we wish we could be everywhere at every time, but you have to empower your team and give them that opportunity, that autonomy to make those calls. How do you instill that confidence in them to make the right calls or to pivot when, you know, there's a late notice or something's changed?
Yeah, I think it comes back to like the foundation that we've built, you know, as a new team coming in, and even, you know, with obviously the reputation of, you know, events that had been in the past and wanting to continue that. it's just coming together and realizing that, we just have to work together to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and when we're together, and I think maybe to your point, it's also like, letting them know, hey, it's okay, like whatever, it's like what we talked about before. Hey, here's our goal, here's the objective. Reminding them at the end of the day, this is what we want to get to, and whatever decision you make, as long as that's heading us to that right direction, we'll be okay, right? Or to your point, we can learn from it, get that feedback after, because sometimes it may not. Imagine some calls may have been the best calls or ideas, and that happens. But taking that and learning from it for next time, and then sharing that within your team.
And I think going on that is, obviously the whole concept of the conversation with trust and confidence is that if I'm instilling enough confidence in my team, that they will feel like I can make this decision on my own. I don't need to come, to Michelle to ask X, Y, and Z. Sometimes they might ask for my opinion, but hopefully they feel like they have, and that I have enough confidence in them, and them have their own confidence in themselves, that they can make those decisions and feel like they're making the right call. And that just happens over time as we're, continuing to build. I keep going back to the trust and relationships, but that's kind of the foundation of a lot.
Yeah. Definitely key. Another thing you mentioned, kind of going back to that self-compassion and knowing that handling events, you mentioned if and when things go wrong or awry, how you take that in stride. Has there ever been an opportunity where you practice that compassion and it's helped you with either your confidence, or you've done something so great that it's actually almost a humbling moment, sort of like us making the Fortune Top 20?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I'm honestly gonna pivot outside of work and just being a mom. It's a daily thing. Whereas one moment your child will say something, you're like, yes, I did it. I worked, we made it. And then other mornings, today, it's a scramble to get out of the house, but we survived. We made it, and
It wasn't pretty,
but we got out the door. And, I think that just kind of helps to bring that to work, where you have the same situations where some days you have all the confidence in the world and everything turns out great. And other days it's just one thing after another of fires that you got to put out, but you figure out a way and you move forward, and tomorrow's another day, and hopefully we get out of the house without kicking and screaming.
It's an amazing analogy. I love that, by the way.
I know a lot of parents are going, oh my gosh, yeah, we survived too.
Yeah.
Today was our survival
Today
day,
was a win.
not our thrive day.
Yep.
And it's funny because that goes to the final question we're going to go into is all right, let's talk about some best practices of how we can overcome or, again, find that right balance. And you just gave a great example is we have to celebrate those small victories, those small wins, and it's not just work related. And I love that you brought back to real, also personal life, because we're more than just work, right?
Yeah.
We're a parent, we're a sibling, we play multiple roles, whatever that is. And then just celebrating those small victories is so important. So just take that moment to say, hey, it was probably not the prettiest day or probably wasn't the best, smoothest event possible, but we got it done. Let's, first of all, let's give ourselves a huge pat on the back. We survived. Now it's time to how we're going to pivot and make this less painful for next time, right?
Yep.
I always like stories. One story, so Jen Vasson, my chief human resource officer, leader, she always tells this amazing story about, again, with kids, right? She would say, hey, getting up every morning and getting them to get ready is just always a production, right? Always chaos. So she's like, we're wasting time. There's so much going on. It just seems like it's never enough time and we're just scrambling to get out. So her solution one day, she's like, you know what? Why don't they just sleep in their clothes that they're going to wear the next day? And it's like, yeah, it might be a little wrinkled, but they don't care at that age. So she has them sleep in the clothes that they're going to go in the next day. They get up and it's less time they have to worry about finding what their outfit is and all that. And I'm just like, hey, those little things work. Once again, is she learned and said, we'll try this out. And it worked out for her, So I don't know. Is that a tip that you want to try for your kids if they don't mind what they look like with their clothes? For me, it would be like, no, it's got to be like crisp. I got to look good.
Yeah, exactly. But optimizing time is definitely important, especially as a parent, but, also in your role as well. So
let's go over other best practices. So we just talked about, celebrating those small victories. What other tips or best practices can we do to balance both the humility and the confidence? And any other tips that you can think of?
Yeah, I think especially building the confidence, is a recognized platform. It's huge. And it's funny how such a small thing like that can make someone's day turn from bad to even better. so I think that's, as a leader and even as teammates, just verbally, or I guess digitally, giving people a pat on the back is a great thing that Insight does. So I think, for each of us, that's a huge thing that we can, I guess a small thing that we can do each day for our teams. And then I think, just as we said earlier, giving yourself the ability to listen and take in that positive, whatever someone is trying to give to you, open up, let it in. Don't be like, no, it was fine. It was the team. It was whatever. Take it in.
Yeah.
Let it sink with you, so that, it helps you to build that confidence, but also, you can be humble while also taking the positive feedback.
Yeah, I love that. The platform is a great platform that we have, but it's like, if you don't have one, or if you, whatever the case may be, we just take going out of your way to thank somebody and being specific. It's one of those things we take for granted sometimes. Just a simple thank you and explaining it. I mean, here's one that really resonates with me. Have you ever received a handwritten note recently from somebody? It's kind of rare though, right?
Yep.
We don't really do that as much. Everything's digital.
Yep.
Just like the platform. I love that. But even when you have those one moments where somebody literally takes a moment and handwrites a thank you and explains to you, it really feels really special. And it's interesting. A most recent one I received was with one of our interns this past summer. They literally put an envelope in my desk, and they did that for several people in the organization that made an impact in their internship. And for me, it's like, that was really good. And it wasn't just a simple thank you for being a good, teammate or leader. They literally wrote a nice,
heartfelt,
very
authentic.
personal. And I was just like, wow, that means a lot. And once again, I love that. Just take it in. Just let that warmth fill in a little bit, man. Don't be like the Grinch. Your heart's gonna get bigger, right? What are your thoughts on other best practices or that technique?
Yeah, I mean, the balancing act between confidence and humility is definitely something that's difficult and challenging for a lot. And for me, what stuck out most is just being self-compassionate, empowering your team and allowing that growth, right? Continuing to have that growth mindset, sticking with that. Those are probably some of the key takeaways I had. What about you?
Yeah, let me throw this one out and let me know if you what your thoughts are around this too. But, it's opening the door and giving your team the ability to get recognition or to put them in a situation where they're going to get that visibility. A lot of times we kind of, as leaders, that's kind of our role. We're like, I'm here, like, I got you, what's going on, solve the problem. Hey, can you take on that responsibility or put them in a position where they can succeed and get recognized, right? So that's one of the tips that I have. It's just like, find every opportunity you can to highlight, to put your teammate in a position to succeed and get that visibility.
That's a great perspective, because I think, even as leaders, we started as doers, and I think by nature, we're all feel like in my heart, I'm a doer, and sometimes it is hard to be like, but okay, and so to give others that opportunity is huge, because that's how else does someone build that confidence and, in that situation. If I'm always coming over top. It's definitely taken some time to, as becoming a new leader, figuring that balance out. But I think that's huge. You have to give others on your team the opportunity, because how else can they grow in the ways that they need to?
Yeah, they're going to get that confidence really build up. So one last one before we wrap up. Let's talk about humility as well, right? As a leader, I think it's another thing we need to be mindful of too is owning when we make a mistake, right? Owning when we, whatever the case may be, I've seen this a lot when it comes to the extremes. It's that there are some leaders that just don't take accountability, that are making constantly just it's someone else's fault or coming up. It's like it's exhausting on the other end, but also you talk about a trust killer, right? So my biggest tip on that as well is it's okay, own up to your mistake as long as you learn from it and improve on it moving forward. It doesn't work if you say, I made a mistake, and you keep doing it and doing it and doing it. It's like, all right, are you ever going to learn and get better too, right? What are your thoughts on that part?
No, you hit the nail on the head on there. But mistakes are part of life, part of your job. I feel like no one goes through a time in their career where they don't make mistakes, and you definitely learn from it. And I do think it takes some ownership, because it's not just one person that makes a mistake. It was a culmination. You think about even in sports, it's not the person that missed the last shot. There was so many other things that led up to the point that you needed that last basket to win or whatever the situation is. So it's the same with the team. And so it is taking that accountability, but also being there with your team of like, you know what? Yes, this was a mistake. I was here with you and I probably could have done X, Y, and Z better. And you're both learning. Like there's definitely situations, you know, here at Insight where I needed to do better and I needed to have better communication with my team, which would have helped us to maybe not make that mistake or, you know, done something down the road. So it is huge to not just like kind of put it in the one mistake, but looking at the full picture of how can we all improve to make it better.
Oh my gosh, that is dude. It's like, it's funny though, right? It's like they always focus on the one thing, but in reality there was so much that led up to it. But we just tend to focus on that one thing that stood out to us. But no, it's a collective.
Absolutely. That was a great mic drop or a great way to wrap this up. Yeah, exactly. So on that note, guys, please be sure to follow us on all of our social medias. And if you liked our content, be sure to give us a like and also turn on your notifications for YouTube, any of the podcast streaming platforms, and so you can get the streaming as soon as we release it. Thanks, and until next time.